With that, brings us to the last session of our morning episode. And this is an expert talk on the topic, how will 5G drive the edge computing? Let's hear from an expert on how edge computing combined with 5G will create opportunities to enhance digital experiences, improve performance, support data security, and enable continuous operations in every industry. We have with us this afternoon Vikram Tiwathia, Deputy Director General, COAI. Vikram comes with an experience of over 40 years in providing telecom services and information technology, network deployment, asset management, and related human resource optimization. He works on policy issues for enhancing broadband networks, facilitating digital transformation. It's a pleasure to have you here with us this afternoon, Vikram. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Justin. So it's a pleasure for me at COAI to have been invited to this very interesting 5G driving edge computing discussion. So as you'd have seen, in the recent past, there's been a lot of discussion about 5G. In fact, the good news was that we had the India Mobile Congress first week of October, where the Honorable Prime Minister had come over and officially launched a 5G in India. And there were, multiple announcements by all the telcos giving out their plans to launch 5G in the Indian networks. So the good news is, yes, 5G in India network rollouts have started. And, soon we should see, the users having the benefit of 5G. And later on, I'll cover some types of use cases. But coming to, the relationship between 5G and edge computing. So essentially, it's a symbiotic relationship. It's intrinsic to both. So you have a 5G network and then you have the compute. Now, the question is, where do you place the compute? And, the important part as part of the discussion today and part of this summit itself would be, okay, where do you actually place the compute? And in this case, in case of edge, it is a geography thing, right? So just briefly, how does edge computing work, essentially? So there is a device which generates the data. And that device has to then get connected to a network at the remote location. So this data generated at a remote location connected to a network is then the data moves over the network and goes to a processing center. The processing center, that is what the question is, whether it should be the main data center or should the processing center be located nearby, right? So nearby is because of the business requirements of and essentially the design of 5G is with reduced latency and high throughput capacity. So essentially, what's happening is, because of digitization globally, how do you utilize digital technologies to undertake and deliver services using that data, right? So 5G is enabling the movement of data over the network, and the compute power located at the edge gives an added facility to convert the data streams into some service, which is then again consumed back in the remote location, right? So the advantage in network technologies like, 4G started it, but much more in 5G. And as the audience would understand, that 5G is much more than just, person-to-person compute. It is about, let's say, connecting everything, the Internet of Things particularly, and the massive machine type communications, MTC, and the other 5G major use case, other than the mobile, enhanced mobile broadband, is the ultra reliable and low latency part. So this is the place where the edge compute, actually contributes significantly in reducing the latency part and the turnaround time from where the data is generated. It is analyzed, and some service is the AI or the AR or VR engine runs that data and delivers a service back to the consumer, right? Now, in this case, obviously, you see, 5G is critical to the edge discussion. So what I would do is that 5G also, as most of you would know, has a very technical characteristic of network function virtualization as well as network slicing. So the network slicing can actually give a specific user a particular demand. It's, for example, we have the T20 Cup happening. So if there's a match happening at Adelaide, or if there's a T20 or IPL cricket match happening in the Mumbai stadium, so huge amount of data is going to get, let's say, generated there. And it need not go very far away from the stadium, and the edge compute physically, geographically located nearby can give them a quick service back for high definition video in this case, because a lot of video is getting consumed, right? So that is one example of how 5G would contribute using edge mutually supporting each other, 5G and edge compute. Another example let me share is that, let's say, for example, you have a remote location and you have a security camera, right, which is working 24/7, 365. Now the live video stream of that camera need not essentially travel and convey the complete video data all the time. But what it can do is that the edge compute can analyze that only the essential data, let us say if there is a security breach, only the security breach data is sent back for an alert. So, you don't send a huge pipe of data, but you send the essential data, which is calculated at the edge, right? So the edge compute helps in that. So imagine the savings, both in terms of cost, manpower, and optimization that edge can give. This is just as an example to set the tone, right? Now, what I'd like to share is what is currently, the status of, let's say, telecom networks in the country. So here's the good news. The good news is India today is the highest consumption of data per smartphone user, right? It's nearly almost 16 to 18 GB per connection. The next nearest country is South Korea, which is at about 9. Now, what this illustrates is that the huge capacity or the huge demand in the market for data, right? So India has done a marvelous job, and it's in the top 5 countries for LTE availability. Now you imagine that, with the coming of a 5G networks going live, how this will facilitate the and deliver the demand for this high amount of data. And as it's a favorite example of mine. What is the power of this? The power of this is, the world changed the way you look at transportation. You had the, Uber and Ola, because you had the device, a smart device combined with the internet, combined with KYC, and you could write an algorithm and it changed the way the world sees transportation. Similarly, for accommodation, for India, you see the impact for a country like India. 5G networks, edge compute, or essentially telecom networks with a high capacity throughput, with the power of compute, it has changed. India could implement a national taxation program, which we all now know as GST. So basically, the power of these two, the networks and the compute, can change the way the taxation system of a country works, right? So therefore, as we go along and have more digitization, what one can virtually see with this, the 100 years of independence, and the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and all this, that the government is highlighting. So the contribution of the digital technologies, 5G and compute, and coupled with edge compute, can contribute very significantly to the economy at large, right? So this is something I thought I'd just say, the power of this whole ability that we have. Now, one or two challenges that we have is a very low amount of fiberization, right? Because all this data will obviously currently it travels on wireless networks, but later when we have more 5G networks going out, we really need to ramp up the optical fiber backhaul, so that the data which is consumed or generated over a wireless network, the 5G network, how it can be carried back, because both edge computing centers as well as main data centers particularly would require a optical fiber connection for it to be able to take the juice out of the huge amount of data at that particular point where the data crunching is going to happen. Now the other I would for the audience, I'd like to say, how do you see, let's say if you want to locate an edge compute place geography, where do you want to place it, right? So one of the things is that Tarang Sanchar is a portal of the Department of Telecom, where all the BTSs and all towers are on one location. So any company which wants to see what is the kind of wireless connectivity, at least you can go and have a look at that. The wireless connectivity in this town is available at which type of technologies it can be seen, right? So here's another point of interesting thing is that the current data download speeds on an average are about 15 Mbps across the country. UCLA publishes this, and the National Digital Communication Policy is that wants it to be about 50 Mbps. So the network, actually the 5G network deployment, will essentially take it there. The moment by December of next year, we will have pan-India deployments. So that obviously will facilitate a lot of the services being delivered, and will be a driver of the demand for edge compute market, right? Now, a couple of words about edge compute. Why does it require? So, the main thing about edge compute is that, let's say a retail store or a warehouse, right? E-commerce warehouse is located, far away from where the delivery takes place. But a lot of the point of sale machines are there in a city, for example. So, and the actual warehouse is away. So obviously there is an important role for edge compute, which will facilitate more efficient operations, faster response times, and obviously greater employee productivity. Besides, it reduces the costs significantly, right? Now, the 5G network obviously will facilitate this, and the important part which comes to my mind is, what are the use cases? See, ultimately, you have to deliver for the consumer a use case. And what we are saying that use cases, particularly from COAI, we've been emphasizing a digital readiness index of states, right? Because every vertical, so if the agricultural vertical or the automobile vertical or the logistics vertical or the farming or health, right? They have to be digitized by themselves, because they are the producers of the data. And then a service, for example, for a health, for a hospital, so the hospital data or all the sensors and IoT sensors, the hospital devices will be generating the data, and that goes to a compute center, and the edge compute analyzes that and sees how much of the service can get delivered with a low latency and directly back, and how much of it has to go back, right? So obviously this will result in much more, energy savings, and energy sector by itself. You see a management of, remote oil rig in the sea, and you have a operations center, in the mainland. So coordination, and how can you facilitate services at the oil rig and services at the hinterland, right? Similarly, for a country like India, particularly, one sees the agricultural sector, the retail sector, and the healthcare sector to be, significantly utilizing 5G and coupled with the edge compute analytics that will be facilitated by the 5G network. right? And with that, I would, kind of sum up essentially the importance of this is that what are we trying to do in this whole paradigm? Essentially, it's efficiency is equal to output by input. Now, with a 5G and a computing network, what do I get? I get an ability to crunch this data more, run my AI, algorithms better, and reduce the cost of inputs. So the efficiency of the each sector or each factory can be enhanced by coupling the 5G and the computing networks, right? And particularly the edge compute is obviously going to facilitate that significantly. So that is something which, for the country, I think it's a good time. And another good thing that's happening is that the National Broadband Mission is reaching out to all the states, and states have set up state broadband committees. So all this will actually align a national effort, as is, been given a direction through the Gati Shakti initiative. So all this put together has great potential for the country. And I'm sure the NASSCOM, this Cloud Summit, will bring out many more lessons which would be beneficial to many sectors across the country. With that, once again, it's been a pleasure being here, and I now take this opportunity to revert back to you, Justin.
Thank you, Vikram, for your insights and your input.